Hey guys, welcome back. So we're continuing with more Miguel O'Hara Spider-Man 2099, which continues to do a bit more world building for the new Earth 2099. So if you're enjoying these videos, make sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications so we can squad up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so coming back, we hit the ground running as we find Miguel O'Hara responding to a distress signal coming from Khonshu's crypt located on the moon, which right now for Miguel, this is also him finding out that he's Khonshu's emergency contact, so he suits up in his 2099 spider armor to make his way to the Hawk's Nest, which has been deserted for some time now, so he can use the cannon on this base and shoot himself up to the moon. But really quickly, as far as this Hawk's Nest location, both being deserted as well as Black Widow 2099 letting Miguel use it here, this is a bit of a callback to Spider-Man 2099 Exodus issue 4, when Miguel got help from Widow to protect the mutant technopath named Nostromo, who they needed to keep alive to stop Norman Osborn's cabal, because at the time this led to Widow tracking down Hawkeye 2099, who was using this low orbit space station to take out a number of targets which he planned to use to kill Nostromo. So this Widow defeated him, tossed him out of the airlock, and more or less took over the space station from here. But also when this happened, it was revealed that Widow 2099 was actually Yelena Belova, who took him down as revenge for Natasha Romanoff. But also because she mentioned a number of times before that using tech really isn't her thing, she hasn't been making use of this low orbit station. So for her to hand the keys over to Miguel, so to speak, it was something that only made sense, especially with Miguel needing it in a pinch. But going forward, with Miguel heading up to the Crescent Crypt, which is like your high-tech moon-based tomb of Khonshu. But when he gets here, to his surprise, nothing has been stolen. And like I mentioned before, Miguel's come up here alone, with it being a last-minute emergency call, but also much like we saw in the last issue, he's still operating without Lila, his artificially intelligent digital assistant, because she was in the middle of self-updating when Miguel got this emergency astral alert. But as soon as Miguel gets here, he notices that nothing's been stolen. So it's not like the place has been raided, but instead it's more like somebody threw a tantrum here, cause next when he finds Khonshu, who's just been torn in half, right away Khonshu just tells Miguel he's still here, to where right after that Dracula pops up behind Miguel while saying, "Of course I am. This was my tomb first, the tomb of Dracula." And I know that sounds a little crazy, but we'll talk about how that is in just a little bit. Because at first, Dracula realizes that Khonshu called Spider-Man up here for backup. But right now, Miguel is surprised to even see Dracula alive, since he was at the vampire capital in Terra Rubra when it was hit with a solar orbital strike, which is why Miguel and really the whole world thought that Dracula was dead. And with him dying as a result of an attack on the vampire capital, it also made him a martyr. But he doesn't care about that, or really even who did this attack, because all he really wants now is to go back to Earth and get revenge on all of humanity for both himself and all of the vampires whose lives were lost as a result of that attack. So from here, Dracula, he just keeps going. And I say it like that because Miguel, he's trying to get a word in, but Dracula, he's more concerned about finishing the story and telling Spider-Man how he ended up here after that attack. Because he goes on to tell Miguel, "You speak of Terra Rubra as if it was struck by some unloving deity. Men attacked the vampire capital. An orbital solar strike. Night became day, penetrating hearth and home. I defended my people with all I had. Shunting the blast left me scorched. Humans cannot survive 6th degree burns. Vampire burns reach a 7th degree, deeper than bone to the soul. The precious few I'd saved loaded my flesh into a coffin lined with native soil. Destined to heal beneath the surface of the moon, there I slept. I mended, while my kind went unavenged. Until now, I am owed Spider-Man. My people are owed a river of blood." And with saying this, he tells Miguel that he's going to give him the same ultimatum that he gave Khonshu, which was either to deliver him to Earth or die. But now with Dracula saying this, it tells Miguel what he needs to know. Because the truth is, Dracula's stuck here. Because if he knew how to use the technology in the Crescent Crypt, he would have already made his way back to Earth. So his plan was to get Khonshu to call for help, so Dracula could use whoever came to the rescue as his ticket to Earth. So of course Miguel tells him that he can't let that happen. So he goes to web Dracula up, only for him to quickly turn into mist, and once again pop up right behind him. And from here, this fight quickly turns into a showcase of different abilities from both of these guys, and it's really interesting. Cause for Miguel, since he now notices that Dracula wants to go toe to toe, he ends up putting his talents to use. But also Miguel is still thinking here that Dracula doesn't actually want to kill him. Because again, Dracula wants a ride back to Earth, and if Miguel's dead, that's not going to happen. Or at least that's the running theory at the moment, because Dracula has another idea in mind if Miguel doesn't want to cooperate. But what I find surprising here is that for a moment, Dracula attacks Miguel with electricity, which falls under his ability of weather manipulation. But even still, this is something that we do not see that often. And I guess the main reason why is because if Dracula uses too much, it'll drain his energy and he'll need to feed. Which, just as a quick example, this is something we were shown back in Thor Volume 1, Issue 333, when both Dracula and Thor summoned the thunder at the same time, which as a result made the storm stand still because it didn't know who to listen to. And even back then, Dracula admitted using this power took away a lot of his strength. So after that, he attacked Thor with a bunch of rats. But right now, Dracula's not going for anything even close to that scale, let alone doing thunder tug of war with Thor. Cause right here his intention is just to give Miguel a taste of electrostatic lightning, to make him reconsider giving him that ride back to Earth. So jokingly, Miguel tells Dracula that he doesn't want to share him with the world cause he's greedy, as he gives Dracula a slice across the face. Which on one hand lets Dracula know that this Spider-Man's a little different than the one that he remembers, but he tells Miguel that like the other Spider-Man, they confuse a costume and some genetic meddling with being a true creature of the night, as Dracula then transforms into his man-bat form, which still doesn't convince Miguel that Dracula's actually trying to kill him, so he just slams him through the ground, only to find that there's actually a crypt underneath. So next, Dracula goes for the rat attack, but because there's no rats on the moon, this is instead Dracula breaking himself down into a ton of rats and then reforming just to catch Miguel off guard. But much like we saw earlier, through the course of this, Miguel is trying to tell Dracula something. But all Miguel is able to get out are words like, your anger, it's out of date, vampires, they're gone. Which now has Dracula thinking that Miguel's trying to tell him his version of the same story that Dracula just told. So he goes off, slamming Miguel into the ground, into the ceiling, and then through the wall, where it nearly causes Miguel to drift out into space. Which now shows Miguel that Dracula might be mad enough to kill him, and eventually figure out another option later. But this also ends up causing the 5-second countdown for the oxygen quarantine lockdown. But Miguel's able to zip his way back inside just in time, right before Dracula cuts his web. And as he does, Dracula lets him know that there is a third option, aside from the take me to Earth or die ultimatum. So from here, he starts peeling into Miguel's spider armor and removing his mask so that he could use his classic look into my eyes trick, because the third option would be for Dracula to control him and reduce Miguel's consciousness to a babbling husk where he can only observe what's going on outside, capable of seeing, but unable to act, so he can watch Dracula raise the earth. But suddenly Miguel tells Dracula, you keep calling me Spider, makes me think you'd know. Vampires aren't the only ones who bite, as Miguel then bites Dracula on the neck, tearing out a good chunk of it too. And Miguel goes on to let Dracula know that he's aware that this won't kill him, because he knows vampires, studied their culture in school, because for Dracula, after he was seemingly dead, he was considered to be a historical figure. But the reason why Miguel bit Dracula was so that he would finally shut up and listen, because the people who attacked his home, Terra Rubra, they were Pruslandic zealots who have long since been convicted of genocide, and as recent as 10 years ago, the humans took Dracula's city and gave his people a world in return. A nanotreatment was developed that could turn water into blood, so his people would no longer have to hunt, and the Free Nations chartered a ship that would take his people to their new world, while placing his daughter, Lilith Drake, as the captain, so she could lead their people into tomorrow. Miguel goes on to tell him, vampires aren't extinct, they're gone. They've moved on without you. You want rivers of blood? The vampire home world has oceans of it. And though not every vampire followed Lilith to Domus Draconum, those who stayed follow Earth's laws, which don't favor impalers. And he goes on to tell Dracula, if he wants a ride, he can get it. And that ride could either be to Earth or to the vampire's new world. But if Dracula chooses Earth and he goes back to his butcher's ways, then he'll be hunted down by a number of people. And at the front of that line, it'll be Spider-Man. So Dracula chooses to go to the vampire home world, as he commends Miguel for being cutthroat and devoted to his kind. So from here, he sends Dracula off in a space coffin with rockets on it, along with the warning to never come back. And after that, he finds Moon Knight and places her in a sarcophagus so she can begin her process of recovery. And with all this done, Miguel hotwires the teleport array so he can take him back down to Earth. And as he does, he thinks about some of the things that Dracula told him while they were up there on the moon, as well as what he learned about Dracula from their encounter, which causes Miguel to make his way to Terra Rubra, where a statue has long since been built in Dracula's honor. And Miguel just thinks to himself about how Dracula was many things: bloodthirsty, cruel, righteous, a monster, a revolutionary, even a national hero. And as it stands, depending on who you're talking to, different people would each say the same about Spider-Man. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/DopeSpill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Drop a like if you enjoyed the video, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.